Who invented sausages? The ancient invention hidden inside every hot dog. What if I told you that one of the world's oldest foods was invented because people were afraid of wasting meat? Not because they wanted a delicious meal. Not because they were trying to create a new recipe. But because thousands of years ago, every animal was too valuable to waste. Today, sausages are everywhere. Hot dogs, Bratwurst, chorizo, salami, pepperoni. Almost every country has its own version. They're sold on busy street corners, served in expensive restaurants, and eaten by billions of people every year. But have you ever stopped to ask a simple question? Who invented sausages? Most people immediately think of Germany. After all, Germany is famous for its hundreds of different sausages. Others might guess Italy, or maybe America because of the hot dog. But they're all wrong. The story begins thousands of years earlier, long before Germany even existed. To understand why sausages were invented, we first need to understand one of humanity's biggest problems. Keeping meat alive was easy. Keeping meat fresh was almost impossible. Imagine living in a world without refrigerators, without freezers, and without electricity. A family might spend weeks, or even months, raising a single sheep, goat, or pig. But once that animal was slaughtered, time started running out. Within days, the meat would begin to spoil. Every lost piece meant wasted food, wasted effort, and sometimes the difference between surviving the winter or starving. People quickly learned how to dry meat, smoke it, or cover it with salt. Those methods helped. But there was another problem. After butchering an animal, large pieces of meat weren't the only parts left behind. There were tiny scraps, small cuts, fat, organs, and pieces too valuable to throw away, yet too awkward to preserve on their own. Then, someone noticed something extraordinary. The animal's intestines were surprisingly strong, flexible, waterproof, and completely edible. What if, instead of throwing away the small pieces of meat, they packed them inside? Mixed them with fat, salt, and spices. Then dried them or smoked them until they lasted for weeks, or even months. It was a simple idea. But it changed food forever. Because the world's first sausages weren't invented to taste good. They were invented to make sure almost nothing went to waste. And that simple invention would soon travel across ancient civilizations, feeding merchants, soldiers, and even emperors for thousands of years. But who were the first people to turn that simple idea into reality? The honest answer is, no one knows for certain. Like bread, cheese, and butter, sausages were invented so long ago that no inventor's name was ever recorded. Yet archaeology gives us some remarkable clues. One of the earliest pieces of evidence points to Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, more than 5,000 years ago. This fertile land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers was home to some of the world's first cities, where people raised sheep, goats, and cattle on a large scale. Historians believe these early herders were already experimenting with ways to preserve every edible part of an animal, and stuffing seasoned meat into cleaned intestines was one of the smartest solutions they discovered. The idea spread because it solved several problems at once. The casing kept the meat together. Salt slowed spoilage. Drying and smoking extended its shelf life. And almost every part of the animal could be used instead of wasted. In a world where food was never guaranteed, that wasn't just clever, it was revolutionary. By around 800 BC, sausages were already familiar across the ancient Greek world. One of the earliest written references appears in Homer's epic poem, the Odyssey. In one memorable scene, a sausage is described sizzling over a fire as someone eagerly turns it, waiting for it to cook. It may sound ordinary today, but it tells us something extraordinary. Sausages had already become a common food nearly 3,000 years ago. Then came the Romans. And they didn't just eat sausages. They helped spread them across an empire. As Roman legions marched from Britain to North Africa and from Spain to the Middle East, they carried preserved foods that could survive long journeys. Sausages were perfect. They were compact, filling, easy to transport, and lasted far longer than fresh meat. Wherever Roman soldiers settled, local people adopted the idea and adapted it to their own animals, spices, and traditions. Soon, every region was creating its own version. Some preferred pork. Others used beef, lamb, or goat. Some added garlic. Others mixed in herbs, pepper, wine, or local spices. The recipe kept changing, but the idea never did. Take the meat that would otherwise be wasted, preserve it, and make it last. That simple concept would survive the fall of empires and eventually become one of the most widespread foods on Earth. By the Middle Ages, sausages had spread across almost every corner of Europe. But one region would become more closely associated with them than any other: Germany. Today, Germany is home to more than 1,500 varieties of sausage, from Bratwurst and Weisswurst to Frankfurter and countless regional specialties. So why did Germany become the country everyone associates with sausages? The answer wasn't that Germans invented them. It was that they perfected them. Medieval Germany had ideal conditions for raising pigs, and pork became one of the country's most important foods. Every autumn, families slaughtered livestock before winter arrived. Nothing could be wasted. The finest cuts were eaten fresh, while the remaining meat, fat, and trimmings were carefully seasoned, stuffed into natural casings, then smoked, dried, or cured to last through the cold months ahead. Over time, every town developed its own recipe. Some favored garlic, others preferred marjoram, caraway, nutmeg, or black pepper. Some sausages were meant to be grilled. Others were boiled, smoked, or eaten after months of curing. The result wasn't one famous sausage, but hundreds of them. Meanwhile, similar traditions were flourishing across Europe. In Italy, cured sausages eventually evolved into salami. In Spain, smoked paprika gave birth to the bold flavor of chorizo. In Poland came kielbasa. Across Eastern Europe and the Balkans, nearly every region created its own version using local meats and spices. By now, sausages had become far more than a way to preserve food. They had become part of culture, part of family traditions, part of festivals and celebrations. A recipe passed from grandparents, to children, for generations. Then, during the 19th century, millions of Europeans crossed the Atlantic in search of a better life. They carried very little with them, but they brought something that didn't take up much space: their recipes. Those recipes would soon give birth to one of the world's most iconic street foods: the hot dog. And from that moment on, the story of sausages would become a truly global one. When German immigrants arrived in the United States during the 19th century, they brought generations of sausage-making traditions with them. Among their favorites was the Frankfurter, a long, thin sausage that quickly became popular in American cities. Street vendors began serving it in a slice of bread so customers could eat it while walking. Over time, that simple idea evolved into the hot dog, one of the most famous foods in the world. From there, sausages spread even farther. Advances in refrigeration, transportation, and food production made them cheaper, safer, and available almost everywhere. Today, nearly every country has its own unique version. Britain has the Cumberland sausage. France is known for andouillette. China makes sweet and smoky lapchong. South Africa has boerewors. Even countries with no ancient sausage tradition have created their own local varieties, proving that one simple invention can take on countless forms. But perhaps the most fascinating part of the story is that, despite thousands of years of change, the original idea has barely changed at all. Take small pieces of meat. Season them. Place them inside a natural casing. Then preserve them by drying, smoking, or cooking. The recipe has evolved. The spices have changed. The technology has improved. But the idea remains almost exactly the same as it was thousands of years ago. So, who invented sausages? The answer is, no one person. There was no famous chef. No king. No single civilization that can claim the invention. Instead, sausages were born from human necessity. Early herding communities, likely in ancient Mesopotamia and neighboring regions, discovered that by using every edible part of an animal and preserving it inside natural casings, they could make precious food last far longer. Over thousands of years, that simple solution spread across continents, with each culture adding its own flavors, traditions, and identity. It's an incredible journey. From the first farming villages, to the armies of Rome. From medieval smokehouses, to German butcher shops. From immigrant street carts, to stadiums, restaurants, and family barbecues around the world. The next time you bite into a sausage, or a hot dog, remember, you're not just eating a popular food. You're tasting an idea that has survived for more than 5,000 years. An invention born not from luxury, but from survival. Because sometimes, the greatest inventions in human history aren't created to impress the world. They're created simply to make sure nothing goes to waste.